be a bridge between the physician, the patient, and the pharmaceutical companies. And it's really to help the patients access quote unquote free medications. What was driving the need for quote unquote free medications? I think everybody knows that medications have become incredibly expensive. And that really has been one of the main drivers. These free programs are really anything but free, and I'm going to go on and show you what I mean. First, to address the issue of the cost. Those free programs, there's more than 300 of them out on the market. Each one has its own application. So even within a single company, you may have to fill out multiple applications. First, some examples of drug cost, if you're not familiar. Basal-Gar is a long-acting once-a-day insulin. It's been on the market for maybe about 5 years. And it helps, being a once-a-day shot, it helps to simplify patients' medication program. When I came out of training, it wouldn't be unusual to have a patient have to take 4 shots a day of insulin and could easily be on 2 different types of insulin. So that is part of the drive, part of the reason why the cost is so high. So we're talking like $2,400 for a 3-month supply. Advair is a very basic asthma COPD type medication. You can see $1,500 for 3 months. Humalog, quick-acting insulin, we're talking $6,000 for 3 months. Rapamune, little unusual medicine for kidney transplants, talking $6,000. Ventolin, a very common medicine, $200 for 3 months. Breo Ellipta, another asthma COPD medicine, now we're up to $1,300 for 3 months. So we're going to try to walk you through a pretty typical patient. John, who has lived in Winchester all his life. He has asthma. Unfortunately, he's also developed type 2 diabetes. He is taking Advair and he is taking Trulicity. So the Advair, John also has no insurance. It's going to cost him $5,600 cash to get a 3-month supply of the Advair. Trulicity has been on the market for maybe about 5 years. Simplicity is one of the rules of thumb that physicians use across the board, but specifically with medications. And what I mean is, like I said, when I came out of training, you could be on 4 shots a day of insulin. And then with the Basal-Gar, it's dropped down to 1 shot a day. Trulicity is 1 shot a week. Plus, it has some other side benefits. It enables the body to use the insulin it's already making, and it makes that insulin more effective. It also helps people to lose weight. In fact, actually, some of the drug companies are using their products strictly for weight loss. So the Advair for a year, $5,600, the Trulicity, $18,000. So John could easily be up taking only 2 medications to $24,000 a year, to give you some idea of the cost. As you can guess, John is overwhelmed and he doesn't know where to turn for help. When I was at Selma Medical Associates, we used to do the paperwork that would allow this to happen. Just to begin to give you an idea of the complexity of dealing with quote unquote free programs, these are the introductory forms for, this is Eli Lilly, and they break their products into 4 categories, category 1, 2, 3, and this is 4. So you have to first have a medication from one of the 4 categories. Then their criteria require that you be a United States citizen. You have to be low income, and they give you categories of income that you have to fall within. You cannot have any health insurance or pharmacy insurance except for Medicare Part D. But if you have Medicare Part D, you get your medication, but only after you've spent $1,100. So these, then once you've done the preliminary 2 forms that I just showed you, you then get to go on to the next 7 forms and fill these guys out. So every program varies. With Eli Lilly, you have to spend $1,100 to get your free product. Nova Nordisk, you've got to spend $1,000. AstraZeneca, you've just got to spend 5% of your income. So if this were a typical rebate to buy a widget, it would cost me $1,100 to be able to buy my widget to get it free. So you can see we have 90 different companies, each with a different program. It becomes incredibly complex. So John is befuddled. He doesn't know what to do. Like I mentioned 10 years ago, before the pharmacy was operating, Selma Medical Associates used to fill this out. These programs change every couple months. So that because you filled out an Eli Lilly form yesterday, it may not be the same Eli Lilly form today. It would take our nursing staff an hour to 3 hours and long periods of time, as you can guess, on hold to get one of these applications filled out. So that was part of the impetus for developing this. Where is the compassionate pharmacy? Well, space has been donated over at Rite Aid across from the old Selma house. It used to be Rite Aid, it's now Walgreens. So if you walk in the door, it's in the very back in the right corner. What does the compassionate care pharmacy require? Well, you have to have a local physician, and you need to be within the Valley Healthcare Service area. You have to meet the income and the copay requirements. And then the patient does, though the applications are filled out, it's still dependent on the patient to bring in the income statements. If someone has failed disability, they need to bring in the letter that says why they're not disabled, because Medicaid would pay for the cost of your medicines. So you have to show why you've not qualified for Medicaid. And then you have to show your letter of refusal. As you come in the door and you go to the back, this is who you would meet right off the bat. Donna Nadeau, very lovely lady. Donna is very experienced in processing these applications and leading people to understand what the requirements are. So Donna has been there from the beginning of the pharmacy. She's well acquainted with the restrictions. Over the last, I believe it's about 4 to 5 years, there's now a statewide program that monitors all of the 90 plans and updates them. So Donna can now go to a website for Eli Lilly and have immediate access to all of the programs, including the updates. Once everything is processed, this is who the patient would meet. Gary Rutherford, he also has been there since the inception of the program, and Gary does the dispensing. So you've now seen the total staff of the compassionate pharmacy. So as I mentioned, Form 2008, you can pretty easily see that this group acts as a bridge between the physician and the patient. How is it funded? This is not a funding talk, but do want to mention that $38,000 was raised last year from the community, the employees, and the physicians of Winchester Medical Center. Every year, the physicians do make a donation to the support. 4 years ago, the clinic came under the umbrella of the Winchester Medical Center Foundation. How many patients were served? 420. In the last year, we added 43 new patients, and they generated 773 requests. This saved patients $1.9 million. And that is obviously the retail cost of the medicine, summarized for the 700, well, the numbers of medications that were approved. What the slide does not show is what are the other costs that Winchester, the community, saves? And that's very difficult to quantitate. Because it's things like if you're a diabetic and you don't have your insulin and you're in the emergency room for care, that generates healthcare cost. Let's say you're an asthma patient and you don't have your inhalers and you're in the emergency room, you're admitted, you're in the intensive care unit, you're on a ventilator, that generates a tremendous amount of healthcare cost. The only point being is that there's a lot of unseen costs that are difficult to quantitate that are prevented by the pharmacy. So it's pretty easy to see the benefits. What you wouldn't see otherwise would also be the pharmacy students at Shenandoah University rotate through the clinic. This is one of their ways to get experience in dealing with the public and medications, and they are required in most states to do patient education. So they get to participate in that patient education part. The other thing, about a year ago, I don't know if you all saw in the newspaper, in the Winchester Star, that the United Way got a grant to integrate care for indigent folks. And United Way has now been rolling that out to the different agencies in the Winchester area, so that now if you come into the compassionate care pharmacy and you need housing, you need food, you need other agencies in the area, by filling out your application with the compassionate care pharmacy, you are immediately linked into the other groups. So you don't have to go from one service group to the next service group filling out their applications. You only do one, and it's used across the network. Want to end the talk. We've got a couple little letters. Donna and Gary frequently get little notes from patients thanking them. And I'm going to just flip. This is really my favorite. And this is my favorite slide, I think, because of what it does not say. You can look at just the block printing, and that already tells you something about the person who wrote this. My guess is, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is not someone who is internet savvy. I doubt if she has a computer. I would probably doubt that she has a cell phone. She may or may not own her own house. I don't know what her education level is, but it's probably not very high. And you can picture this poor lady out there trying to go through those applications and try to get these so-called free medicines from drug companies. So with that, I'm going to end, and we'll open it up for questions.
Cyril, thanks for what you're doing. I know that I do a lot of work down at the rescue mission, and the guys down there, I think, are taking a lot of advantage of this. It's a real help to them.
You're right. They are a prime group. The real reason to do the talk is to raise awareness that the hardest part of this job, in a sense, is getting the word out to the people who need it. Now, I doubt of the group that's in the audience today, I would just guess everybody has got health insurance. So obviously this is not the group, but you all know people who know people, and that is the linkage, and that's the purpose. because the people who need it, I mean, like the people at the rescue mission, you know, without people like Pat, they're not going to know about it. So that really is the purpose of today.
Hey, Dr. Barch,
Yes, sir.
this is Wilson. You know, what I found is, having been in that arena for a while, the biggest turnoff to a lot of these people that try to do it is trying to figure out how to maneuver through the minutia of getting to qualify and filling out the paperwork. So I always tell people the best thing to do is, when you go to your primary care office or your physician's office, there's usually one person in that office that's very well versed on how to fill all that out to save them the headache. Because a lot of times people just give up, and then they end up not taking their medication, and that just it destroys the whole healthcare system because they get sick. So anyway,
Right.
That's
Thank you.
exactly right. The intention was to try to get that centralized, and that's the purpose of the compassionate pharmacy. That most healthcare providers nowadays are so stressed, and they have no quote unquote extra time. I mean, all of that time needs to go into patient care. So that's the function of the pharmacy.
That was a great talk. And those of us who have been in healthcare, we have known this for years and years. And, you know, the nurse will say, well, just look online, you'll find it. There's some free drugs out there, and nobody helps anybody because it takes hours and hours. So this is like the best thing ever.
Cyril, this is Libba. What days of the week and hours of the day can someone walk into the compassionate pharmacy?
Good question. Sorry, that was in the material, but I didn't bring it out. 9 a.m. to noon, Monday through Thursday. And I should say that the prescriptions come to the pharmacy and they're dispensed by Gary. And part of the reason in that is to get the patient education piece in there. That is a bit of a problem for those who have real transportation issues. So in some cases, they are being mailed to the patient after the initial pickup.
Thank you.
Having been with the School of Pharmacy and getting students to the compassionate pharmacy, I can't say the experience that the pharmacy students have is absolutely marvelous. And so it's great that those students are involved. And I do know a good number of them have continued wherever they end up ultimately working after graduation. They've seen the model, and I think it continues to populate elsewhere. So again, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. The awareness I've had over the last 10 years, I mean, it used to be that the doctor was the king. You know, what he said goes. Well, now, as Karen knows, pharmacists are integrated into the healthcare teams. You're ill at Winchester Medical Center, and there's like 8 people that come in your room. And the pharmacist, they really provide an invaluable service. The complexity of medications, the complexity of drug interactions is such that you need to have an expert right at the bedside so that you catch things immediately and not after the fact.
If we want to support this, do we do so directly or through the foundation?
Thank you. Jenny is here. I'm going to give her the screen.
Oh, you stay put. And we've been 6 feet apart, but I have a mask on. It is funded through the Compassionate Pharmacy Fund. It is solely for this program under the Winchester Medical Center Foundation. And it funds about $50,000 in support that it takes to run the pharmacy. And the gifts can be made online through our donation website, valleyhealthlink.com/giving.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. They've really been great. And it's been such a joy to be associated with Rotary. Dick's insight is leading to the Field of Honor, and that is really going to be an exciting program to bring to this community. So thank you for having me.